Hi everyone, I'm Sloan from SloanBella.com and I'm back with another channeled celebrity video. This one is on the late singer George Michaels, and I held off on doing the video until I really felt that his energy wanted to come through. Even having said that, I felt like today is the day to do the video. His energy is kind of behind the scenes, contemplative, and he didn't just pop into the room and say, I'm here, unlike some other people's energy. He's very kind of wanting to know if I really want him to come through. So that's either timid or shy, respectful, or he's deciding whether I really want to do the energy because he can't be bothered coming through if I don't. And it made me think of some of his TV interviews back in the day where he just wouldn't show up or wouldn't speak because he just couldn't be bothered. So I got the same kind of energy from him as I was trying to pull the energy through today. However, once I agreed and committed to it, the energy came in very strong. So he was happy to do it. So then I saw a shift in personality. So I saw more of a vibrancy to his energy, which made me actually go and look up his chart. I knew he was a Cancer, but I couldn't remember his rising sign or his moon sign. And I was kind of interested in seeing that he was a double Cancer. So that's a Cancer sun and a Cancer rising, with a 12th house sun, which gives him the musicality, puts it with a Pisces energy in the 12th house. Also a lifetime with all of the men, and this connected immediately when I saw his chart, with all of the men that he dated in his life. Very interesting, because they would have been past life connections with him, which can be said about a lot of relationships, but in particular, the men in his life with the 12th house sun and the aspects to it would have been past life karmic, I'm going to use the word enemies. Okay, so they come through in this life. Obviously, they're not our enemies in this life because we fall in love with them. But when you have a 12th house sun and it references men and it's up in your chart and you are gay, you are pulling in and working your karma through people that you had difficulties in somewhat of a caustic way in a past life, which I found really interesting. Now, the first energy that I pulled up with that was his partner in the band Wham from when he was in school, and he knew Andrew all the way along and through school. But I pulled in the energy of that connection, and I found that really interesting because he wasn't gay, or if he was gay, he wasn't always gay. Okay, so he was with women, and I got the strongest feeling that the reason the band broke up was, besides wanting two different things from the music, there was a wanting to really immerse in each other's energy. And I feel like at the time it was more on George's side than on Andrew's side. So it was interesting because that was a collaboration of energy, and I feel like George couldn't get that texture that he needed. So I feel like he needed to feel it, and when he couldn't feel it, and it might have been that one was straight, one was gay, I could equate it with that when I was looking at the chart. It was really interesting. I kind of just flashed on that when I looked at it. And just to finish the astrology part of it, he had a Leo moon, which is why he was kind of flashy in his appearances and just kind of out there and flashy, and look at me, because the Cancer isn't going to be like that, but add it to the Leo and you're going to get that combination. Now, going back to his energy, when he comes through, I go to his childhood. I go to his early childhood. There isn't much of a connection to the father, but it's not because there isn't a connection to the father. It's more because there's more of a connection to the mother, and that the father was most likely emotionally absent. That was the feeling I was getting. Not that the father was bad, not that the father did anything, just that the father had a different perception of the child and had other things to do. So I get more of that kind of a connection. So it's not like he was saying there was a bad family connection. He's just saying it wasn't really what he wanted. So there was a loneliness to him as a child, and there's a loneliness to him all the way through his life. We don't actually see that on camera. I don't think that that's the way I would describe him until I started to feel the energy. So there's a real disconnect between him and everybody else around him. This is what I'm getting, actually, which I found fascinating because he's far, far more moody, sensitive, caught in if you're looking at him, what you're thinking. So he was more reactionary than I ever noticed. So he was very good at hiding that. That was the interesting part. The other thing that I got, because I asked him how he decided to be a musician, like what I mean, okay, we all grow up, we want to be like a doctor, a lawyer, a singer, an actress, you know, a vet, whatever. But in particular, I asked him, what made you want to be a singer? And it was a really interesting answer because you know how some people, a lot of people, so we watch TV, our parents do things. So if you come from a family of vets, you probably want to be a vet because you see how your parents are vets and it's a good thing and it's just what you grew up around. So it's natural. And so you focus your attention that way. Or my dad was a football player, so I'm going to be a football player. Or my mom was a model, so I'm going to be a model. Makeup company. You kind of focus your attention that way, but it's very conscious. His decision to be a musician was a very unconscious, and I'm going to put it as intuitive or fated decision. So you could say that about a lot of musicians, like they wouldn't get where they were unless it was supposed to be, but this was different. The thought came from outside of him with almost no conscious focus on where that thought was coming from. So the thought of how to be a musician came to him in a very intuitive way, inspired from completely outside of him. And just one day he woke up, he's showing me around the age of 7 or 8, he woke up and he's like, that's what I'm going to do. Not because I want to do it or even know what it is. It's more like, oh, musician in my mind, now let me focus. So it had to come to him intuitively. That is how he worked. Not everybody is that way. Not every musician is that way. Not every person is that way. This is how it was for him. And he had these connections around him that would kind of harness the energy so that he could focus. So once he decided to focus, he was kind of guided in a way where he could. Now I jump right up to about 3 days before he passed away. So I went right from the childhood up to probably the week before he passed away, but really about 3 days. And I'm asking what happened. Now he skipped over the whole fame part of it, the whole like, I'm a star, I'm dancing, I'm all over the world, people love me. He's not even going there. He's going to when he died. There's a problem with that. Now, it isn't a murder problem. What it is, I believe, is he died. And the first thing I picked up was heroin. And I'm really sorry to say it because I don't think I've ever heard he had a heroin problem. And I'm not saying it for the reason you think I'm saying it. But that's the feeling of the drug that I got when I was trying to figure out how he passed. And it was this feeling of like what you feel like when you're on heroin. So when you take it, ingest it, you kind of float away. It's a very physical body type of thing. And you kind of float into your body and out of your body. It's not like a harsh thing. I would take meth to be as a very harsh thing. Heroin's more of an entire body, spirit kind of feeling to it. That's the feeling I get with him. And I was trying in my head to grasp it because I'm like, you don't strike me like a heroin addict. Then he started to show me his teeth. So he started to show me what was going on with his teeth, and there were teeth issues at that time. So I'm like, oh, okay. So there were some most likely surgeries that were done 5 or 6 months prior to his passing, and there was medication given from the tooth issues, and that is where I feel I got the heroin feeling and the connection of whatever he drank or ate or smoked or did or combined it with it, and that's what I feel the issue. That's how I feel he passed. Now, I was also drawing down the line of the back of the teeth and down the throat into this area and showing that the esophagus also had problems. So his actual physicality was not at his strongest. And he and I are the same. Well, he was the age I am now at the time that he passed. So I don't have those issues. So to feel it on him, I know that this is what he's trying to show me because it's going down here. So it's the esophagus, it's down into the stomach, and it was like something was expanded in this area. I'm almost wondering if there was tissue ruptured or like a hernia in the esophagus or the upper part up here, whatever they call it there, not in the stomach, but actually above the stomach. And also with the feelings with the teeth, I'm going straight to the heart area. So I'm having a combination of physical symptoms, and I'm taking medicine for this, and this is why I passed. I also kind of choked and didn't pay attention. So he was weirdly also having trouble with sleep apnea. So whatever pills and medication he was taking was repressing his actual respiratory system, and he was already having trouble in this area in the most literal sense of the word. What you eat gets stuck because there's something broken or ripped or a hole or whatever in this area, plus whatever pain he's feeling in the tooth area. So I'm getting this whole combination of stuff that's coming through with him. And then he swings my mind back to the fame part, okay? So once he's got me over here, and I'm speaking it as quickly as I can, I'm going back to the rise of his career. He's showing me the band Wham, which is how, well, I came to know about him. totally obsessed with it when I was a teenager. Anyway, obsessed with him, obsessed with the band. But he's showing me that, and he's kind of saying that that took off for him in a way that he doesn't even understand. So there's confusion with him about how he got so big with that band. And then there's his Andrew in the band and George together. What I am feeling with this, the reason that the band broke up, it's kind of how he's making me feel, is that the energy that George needed from Andrew was not given to him. So it was not reciprocated. And that is why the band pulled apart and broke up. In case you Wham fans wanted to know. I can say that 12 times. You can't. Anyway, that's actually what happened, is George wanted to really experience energetically his music partner, and he couldn't. And I'm wondering if that is a gay straight thing, or actually like creative thing. Like I can't sink my teeth into it. I can't feel it. It's like I'm trying to grab it and I can't grab it. So it's what pulled him apart, is he couldn't feel it. So George is kind of showing me if he can't feel it, he won't do it. So there's nothing he's going to participate in this life unless he can feel it. So he's very, very, very particular, picky, choosy about who and what he creates around him, because he has to feel it. If he cannot feel it, he will not do it. That is not the case with other musicians. I would hope it would be the case, but in his particular energy field, this is the case. He also is really touched, I'm just getting this right now, really touched by, there are women that go to visit his, outside his house, down the street, all the way up the street. I guess they're still dropping flowers there, but he's in particular showing me the little kids that he has around the energy of where he used to live. So wherever it is he died, and I'm assuming it's in England, I have no idea where, because I don't know the country. Anyway, where he passed away down there, he's showing me these cute little kids that come with their mothers, that come with flowers. These are, or maybe it's their grandmothers, because they're slightly older. I'm laughing because I just said his fan base was grandmothers. I'm sorry, I'm getting laughed at for that, but that's not what I meant. I'm thinking the women, these aren't their kids. So I'm thinking the women are taking their grandkids out. These kids are little, like before first grade kids, and he's acknowledging that they're paying attention. Now they obviously maybe don't know who he is. Maybe some do, maybe have heard the name, but little kids don't pay attention. But he's acknowledging the sweetness and the essence of their energy. And he's saying, so George is drawing my attention, and it's actually making me laugh because I just realized that I said his fan base is grandmothers with little kids. That's not what I meant. I'm actually laughing about that. But it feels like it because they don't feel like always the kids' mothers. And you know how the little kids don't necessarily know what they're doing. They're just going with their family or the grown-ups that are watching them on that day, but he's noticing the energy of these little kids, and he's actually touched because the vibrancy of them is very sweet in what they're doing. It's honest. And he's saying to me that he wishes he could have remained in that state in his life where things were honest, and the way that he had that kind of innocence with what he was doing, because he's showing me probably in his early 30s and onward, maybe 6 years before he passed, that was a very, it was a very good and grand time. He had all the fame, he had everything that he wanted, but it was a very dark time for him energetically, and he wanted the energy that he sees of these little kids. He wished he'd have kept that himself. So there's a feeling of regret with him on where he went in his 30s. It's in his 30s for some reason. Not sure exactly what triggered him at that point or went on, because I'm not getting a feel for it. I know everything in the news. I'm not talking about that because that would be redundant. But there is the connection to the spirit energy of these little kids that come to see where he lived with whoever's taking them there, and the flowers that these people put down, and he really is touched by it. So there's a thank you for that people are recognizing him. I don't feel when he passed that he recognized exactly how many people would miss him, because he's quite shocked by that. That's a weird thing to say, because most entertainers will say that to you and not mean it, because their egos are like way, way up here. I don't feel his ego was constructed that way. He has much of a different feel to me. It's more of an intuitive feel from a psychic perspective. So I would say he's more like a person who is a psychic person or an intuitive or a medium, because he was very much living on the psychic side of life rather than the literal side of life, so the day-to-day side. And when I looked at his chart and I saw so many Virgo planets, I thought that's what it is, because a person with that much Virgo in their chart isn't going to consider themselves necessarily good, because Virgo is always striving to be better and they're not good enough. So they're highly critical of themselves. But it is also the most psychic sign. You know, I've said that, and I know I will have everybody else on the planet go, that's not true, but it is true. Virgo actually operates very literally on the earth plane with psychic insight. It is the one sign, because its opposition of Pisces cannot. Okay, so he had that sun in the 12th house, making him like a Pisces, but it was all that grounded Virgo that allowed him to create and to do what he needed to do. He's talking about how fucked up, and those are his words, how fucked up the music industry was for him. It started off one way, and once they realized what he could do, there was like a consumptive aspect to it. He did not like that, so he was constantly fighting. If I were to say anything about George Michaels, I would say he had oppositional defiance disorder. I want to say that. I want to get it out before I'm like shut up by him. No, he's kind of just looking at me like, you didn't say that. In my head, this is what I could see, like just like you didn't just say that. But he had very much oppositional and defiant to what people wanted him to do. He wanted to be a pure channel. Now I know what I'm getting to. The pure channel of the music, like these little kids that just go out of the purity of their heart. They're not thinking, there's not an agenda. There's nothing like this. This is actually what he wanted to do. So he often tried to move his music around what he felt and what he wanted to say about himself. So throughout his music is a lot of who he was manifested in different ways, not in this typical way. So he has quite an interesting musical palette for what he does. He also was avoidant as hell. There was so much of him that just got like, I don't want to do this anymore, especially when Wham broke up. Now, the breaking up of Wham was difficult for him because he wanted something that was very bonded, almost like a marriage. And I don't know, again, if I'm literally talking in a sexual sense, because I'm not getting any insight here on that, or if I mean it that he just couldn't feel the relationship anymore. But there's that feeling of like, I want to bond with this person, I want to create. When he couldn't do that, he moved on from Wham. So after Wham, he went out as himself, and that was terrifying for him. It was not something he wanted to do, but he felt like he had to do it because he said he was going to do it. So that was constructed out of ego. The beginning aspects of him was just intuitive. That was the ego part of him. And there were weird things about him. Like, I don't know if this has been said about him or not, but he talks about an eating disorder right now as I'm saying that. Like, there was an eating disorder, and I'm not sure if I want to say in the typical sense. Like, I don't think it was an anorexic sense. I don't think he thought he was too fat or not too fat, but there was a way that he ate food, what he did with the food, and how it came up and down, how it left his body that was actually, I'm almost wondering, weirdly, if this was like a laxative type of thing, or it's how it feels to me. Like, I ate too much, so I'm going to get it out of my body because it doesn't feel right. It's not like I'm a fat person, too fat, I ate 16 pies. It's not like that. It's not bulimic necessarily. Kind of, but not. It's a laxative thing. This is what I'm getting with him. He's kind of showing me the way that he relieves stress at certain times. Then he's leading me to the question we all want to know, which he's just not wanting me to talk about. But that is a sexual aspect of his life. And he's kind of showing me that it was compulsive. So there was a sex addiction in there, but it was compulsive to things that he was unaware of. So I almost feel like he allowed certain energies into his body, and that the expression of those energies were very, very sexual in a certain way. And it wasn't necessarily him, because there were times he would wake up from this, meaning experience it and then move on past it. And he was like, I don't understand what happened here. Like, I don't understand why I behaved in that way sexually. So there was some stuff about him where he's not quite understanding where his own behavior is coming from. So there was a lot of introspectiveness and feeling about that. And the week before he died, there was a tremendous amount of that going on. Now, there are some aspects of his relationship at the time, and I can't remember the boyfriend's name, the one that found him, that I don't feel like this relationship was the best thing for him. I feel like these were, and it's not my place to say, because whose relationship, I mean, whatever, we all have them. You know, who's perfect? Nobody. But I really don't feel that the relationship was as it was expressed. It's almost as though there was a battle between the two of them, but this does not surprise me from his chart with the 12th house sun, because he's not going to pick men that are harmonious. By nature, the definition of that is men from a past life that were past life or hidden enemies. So not saying in this life they came to him and they're like, oh, I'm going to screw you up because I'm an enemy. It's not that. You wouldn't have a memory, but there would be a conflict that would bring that out. So it would feel contentious in an emotional way. And for him, he couldn't handle that. And I do get at that point that he was extremely bored with his life. I get this. He's like, I'm bored. He is not bored now. He's saying to me, tell him what I'm doing now. So I'm going to tell you what he's doing now from my perspective, from what I'm able to pick up on. So again, when I'm channeling people, this is from my experience and my work. So don't be emailing me, telling me whatever, whoever said whatever, I don't care. This is just from how I pick it up, and I'm a raw channel and I am my own person. So they can do what they do. I do what I do. All right. Having said that, I don't know why I just said that. He's making me rebellious. Okay. So anyway, what he's doing right now, and this is really kind of interesting because he's gathering, okay, there's part of him from the way that he passed where he has to gather information and recognize how he was seen on earth. And there's a part of him that likes to help people from behind the scenes. He actually likes to step forward and help people that he doesn't know spiritually on earth and both. So he's like a little person, and I was going to say a little do-gooder. He's like I don't know, a little force that comes and helps. Now it's interesting because he's very interested in language and how people speak. So there's a part of him that is really trying to usher in an energy for us to learn how to speak differently. And I don't know if he means like our native tongue, such as I speak English. You may speak French. They may speak Spanish, German, whatever. I don't know that it's that, but he's very interested in language and how people speak. And I'm assuming he means how we speak to one another or how we speak within the context as people, but he's trying to push how people speak. So his energy is geared on listening to how we speak and presenting how we speak over here. So he's kind of around people and their conversations and guiding them in that sense. It's kind of an interesting thing. He does tell me that because he somewhat passed away by his own hand in that he didn't do his due diligence with what he was taking and how sick he actually was, and he ignored things. There were still breathing problems with him. These breathing problems happened 4 or 5 years before he passed away, and they never did go away. And it might have something to do with what happened here because there's like a hole down here, but it's esophagus. Okay, so this is not breath. I'm not talking lungs here, or maybe it was lungs hole, but no, I think I'm talking like what he eats, because what he eats, he became very compulsive with what he ate at the end of his life because it was a texture thing and it was how it went down his throat and down into his body and how he felt. So even if he wanted like 65 French fries, cases of French fries or steak or whatever, no, he ate certain things based on how they made him feel and how the texture of them was. It was very weird. It's like I'm dealing with a child here. It's like I'm dealing with a child who's not a child, but that's how I feel with the energy. But because of his own negligence is basically how he's describing to me how he passed, and meaning not keeping up with what he should have done. I will preface this by saying we all die and we're all going to die sometime. So like if an 80-year-old doesn't rush themselves to the doctor, is it really negligence, or are they just like, I've had enough, I'm dying? He kind of had that attitude. But I feel like, I'm going to say this, I feel like the way he passed, and I'm going to the heroin, which I'm going to then dumb it down and put it into some kind of pain killer that was opioid based, and then an infection that ran from the teeth, and then whatever was happening here, and he's still showing me the breathing problems. But this was long before he died. So there was like either it's asthma, anxiety, bronchitis, pneumonia, something like this. He always had trouble breathing at the end, and he didn't want to tell people about everything that was going on with him physically because it's none of your business, even though I just told you. Yeah, he doesn't like that stuff. He's like actually extremely private given all of the antics he pulled. He does not like me to talk about that because he talks about when he's talking about getting caught sexually, he's saying he was tricked into a lot of it. They were always trying to get him. So that's a little bit conspiracy to me, because he's saying they were always trying to get me. So he feels like that was a setup, and he actually is kind of making me feel like that's a setup based on who his management team was and what they wanted him to do and what he was doing. Because at the time he's telling me he was messing with other people's money, not taking it, but not performing the way they wanted him to. And he's kind of letting me know that this was some sort of a setup. So they wanted to catch him in the act of doing something weird or quirky, or like, oh, he did what? I found it funny at the time. Not funny for him, but just like ironic, because that stuff goes on. If you live in Los Angeles, you see that stuff in every park, in every bathroom, in every car, and everywhere. I mean, going back years. I don't even know what year that was, but going back years, you see it. Go to Griffith Park sometime. See all the cars parked. I've even seen like cars parked out there with like, when I first had my son and we were driving through the park, I even saw like a teddy bear, and it was a bondage biker teddy bear in the back window of a car with two guys going at it in the car, chained to the back window. So that's a good, okay, it's not normal, but it's kind of like not abnormal here. Not that everybody does it, and not that he should be doing it, but he's kind of saying that he was, I'll use the word targeted, to be caught in that aspect. So he's making me feel like they positioned somebody there, knowing his habits, watching him, whatever, setting him up to fail. I'll put it that way. So there's a feeling of like that, and there's some resentment towards that whole thing. And he goes back to when the music was simpler. So what I feel from him, actually, he's doing perfectly fine right now, and he likes being around the earth's energy and being around the people here, especially the little kids and the flowers that they leave. He keeps referencing that, like it's so super cute. He loves the flowers. This older woman and her grandchild, and this older woman, meaning not of childbearing years, and it has to be her little grandson. He's just tickled to death that this little boy comes in. He's so sweet. The little boy started going at about the age of 3. So he's a little bit older now. Anyway, he's showing me that. I also feel like after he passed, he wanted to come back right away so he could explain, but now he doesn't. Not right now. He'll come back on his own time, obviously, but he is around, and there's a connection to language. And I'm wondering if he's telling me the way the music is a language, so we have to be careful how we speak. I kind of am getting that impression from him right now. So this is a message to the musicians out there: what you speak and what you say and what you play and what you do, whether you be pop or rap or rock or classical or country. He's concerned about the language. So what language did he speak but music? And he's concerned about what's being said in the language. So that's the message I'm leaving you with from George. And once again, my name is Sloan. I'm trying to get this all out before my battery runs out.